Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. We cut through the noise, pull out those crucial nuggets of knowledge you really need, and today we are unlocking a really key piece of the puzzle for anyone, dreaming of owning property in Portugal. Maybe you're an expat looking for that sun-drenched new life, or a retiree searching for a peaceful haven, perhaps an investor eyeing up the market. Well, the appeal of a Portuguese home is incredibly strong, isn't it? But, let's be honest, as exciting as that vision is, navigating the legal side, especially buying abroad, it can feel, well, a bit overwhelming. And that is precisely why we're doing a deep dive today into what's arguably the most pivotal document in the whole Portuguese property buying process. It's the Promissory Contract for Sale and Purchase, known locally as the CPCV. Now, this isn't just some minor formality. It's your legal cornerstone. It's there to secure commitments, protect your interests, and provide, vital safeguards until you sign that final deed, the escritura. And with Portugal's property market moving at, honestly, a breakneck pace sometimes, understanding this document.
It's not just helpful, it's absolutely essential for a smooth, secure after purchase. So what is this contract really? And why is it so incredibly vital in such a dynamic market? This deep dive is for you. Whether you're just starting to look at the Portuguese market, or maybe you're already right in the middle of it. Our aim, to give you the essential insights without drowning you in information.
You've really hit on something critical there. Buying property anywhere has its complexities, that's true, but Portugal's specific legal framework, especially for non-residents, makes understanding these core documents like the CPCV absolutely paramount. You just can't wing it. So our mission today is basically to extract the absolute essentials from the sources we've gathered on the CPCV. We'll cover everything from, what it actually is to the step-by-step process of how it works. We want to make sure you grasp not just what it is, but really why it matters so much strategically and how it practically protects you on the ground. The materials we've looked at are pretty comprehensive guides on this, and we're here to distill that down into clear, actionable understanding, less jargon, more clarity.
Okay, great. So let's pull back the curtain on this. Contrato Promessa de Compra y Venda. That's the full name. Sounds quite grand. But you said, at its heart, the CPCV is basically a preliminary agreement, a legal promise between a buyer and a seller in Portugal. Its main job is pretty straightforward. It just outlines the key terms and conditions for a future property sale. It acts as this legally binding contract holding everything together until that final deed, the escritura, gets signed. Now, here's the bit I find interesting, almost a paradox. If it's described as optional under Portuguese law, why is it considered very usual and highly accepted? I mean, almost everyone uses it, right? It seems contradictory.
It does seem like a paradox, absolutely, but there's a really practical reason behind it. While yes, technically Portuguese law doesn't force you to have a CPCV for every single sale. Its huge popularity comes down to the legal certainty it provides. It's massive. Think about it like this. Imagine you found your perfect place, maybe that little cottage in the Silver Coast or a cool apartment in Porto. You've made an offer, it's been verbally accepted, brilliant. But there's often this gap, sometimes weeks, maybe even a couple of months, between that handshake moment and actually sitting down at the notary's office for the final signing. And, well, a lot can happen in that time, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. Another buyer could swoop in, the seller could just change their mind.
Exactly. Or maybe some issue pops up with the property itself that wasn't obvious before. The CPCV steps right into that gap. It takes that verbal agreement, that handshake, and turns it into a solid, ironclad commitment. It legally secures both parties to the sale under specified conditions without it. Well, either side could potentially just walk away. Minimal consequences. For you, the buyer, that could mean losing your dream spot, wasting time, maybe legal fees you've already spent.
Nightmare scenario.
Total nightmare. And for the seller, it could mean their property was off the market while a buyer just changed their mind. So the CPCV is incredibly valuable. It safeguards the interests of both buyer and seller during that often quite long waiting period. It means neither side can just back out on a whim without facing real agreed-upon consequences, which we'll get into. This structured agreement, it gives both sides enormous peace of mind. It changes uncertainty into a clear, legally backed path towards actually owning the property. So yeah, it's not just optional. For anyone serious about buying property safely in Portugal, it's really the bedrock of your transaction, your peace of mind, basically.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's the structure, the certainty in that gap. So if this CPCV is our blueprint, setting out these specified conditions and giving us that legal certainty, what exactly does it spell out? What are the specific details, the black and white print, that really protect your interests as a buyer?
Right, that's the next critical piece. Because the protection, and honestly sometimes the pitfalls, are buried in those details. Looking at the research, a standard CTCV is usually pretty thorough. It clearly lays out several key things. First, you've got the agreed sale price and the specific payment conditions. It's not just the total number. It details how much the deposit is, when any other payments might be due, and how the final balance gets paid at the escritura. Super clear, avoids arguments later.
Okay, price and payments, got it.
Then, full identification of everyone involved. That means the complete legal details for both the buyer, that's you, and the seller. No confusion about who is promising what to whom, and absolutely crucial, a detailed description of the property itself. This isn't just the address. It's the exact location, its unique registration number from the land registry, that's the Conservatory du Registro Predial, and its key features.
Like square meterage, number of bedrooms.
Exactly. Total area, number of rooms, maybe specific features like a pool or garage. This makes sure everyone agrees on precisely which property is changing hands. Prevents any mix-ups. Something people sometimes forget, but it's vital, is specifying whether the sale includes any furniture, fixtures, or specific equipment.
Ah, right, like if they said the oven and fridge were staying.
Precisely. If the seller promised to leave those fancy kitchen appliances or maybe that built-in wardrobe, this clause makes it legally binding. You don't want to walk in expecting things that aren't there. This avoids that. The CPCV also covers any conditions about repairs, pending works, or issues that must be sorted out before the final deed.
So like, if the seller agreed to fix the roof first.
Exactly that, or maybe they need to get a final building permit approved. This clause makes completion of those tasks a legal requirement for the sale to go through. It protects you, the buyer, from inheriting expensive problems or bureaucratic headaches. Without this, you could be stuck with the bill or the hassle. It also clearly sets out key deadlines and obligations for both sides. This could be the deadline for you to get your mortgage fully approved or for the seller to provide certain essential documents. These deadlines keep the process moving forward. And, very importantly, it includes those clauses about penalties if someone withdraws. We need to talk more about those as they're your main financial safety net.
Wow, okay. It really does sound like a super specific blueprint for the deal, not just a vague agreement. Covers a lot of ground. So given how thorough it is, even though it's technically not mandatory, the sources say it's highly recommended to nearly all property buyers. Can you break down why it's especially helpful for certain groups, connected to their specific situations? Like, what does this mean for someone dreaming of that Lisbon apartment, especially if they're buying from overseas?
Absolutely. While, look, almost any buyer in Portugal benefits from a CPCV, certain situations really crank up its importance. It goes from good idea to pretty much essential. Let's start with foreign buyers. If you're not living in Portugal, the CPCV gives you a solid, binding contract protecting your interest while abroad. It's huge. Imagine you're dealing with time differences. You can't just pop over to check on things. This document locks in your agreed terms. It gives you crucial legal protection when you're miles away.
It's your anchor, really.
Exactly. It's your anchor. Gives you peace of mind that your investment is secure, even if you're not there day to day. Lets you sleep at night knowing that Portuguese dream isn't just going to evaporate. Okay, next group. Buyers needing a mortgage. For them, the CPCV isn't just recommended, it's often a practical necessity, a non-negotiable step, really. Banks will request a signed CPCV to even start their formal loan approval process. Think about it from their perspective. They need a concrete, legally binding agreement before they commit to lending, potentially hundreds of thousands of euros.
Makes sense. They need proof the deal is real.
Precisely. Without that signed CPCV, you often can't move forward with getting your financing sorted. So it becomes this pivotal document in your mortgage journey. It's the green light for the bank. Then there's the really important case of off-plan or new properties. Buying something that's still being built, maybe an apartment in a development that's just drawings right now.
Yeah, that feels riskier.
It can be. And that's where the CPCV is your absolute guarantee. It ensures your ownership of the unit and establishes conditions for delivery. It spells out the builder's responsibilities, the expected completion date, the quality of the finishes, maybe even the specific materials to be used. It manages your expectations and massively reduces the risk. It legally binds the developer to deliver what they promised, protecting that big upfront investment you've likely made.
Okay, that's critical for new builds. What about hot markets, like Lisbon, Porto, the Algarve?
Right. In areas of high demand, the market can be fierce. Properties move fast. And unfortunately, gazumping, where a seller accepts a higher offer after agreeing a price with you, can happen. A signed CPCV is your shield against that. It effectively stops the vendor from accepting a better offer after the contract has been executed. Oh, okay. Once it's signed, the seller is legally locked in with you. They can't just ditch you if someone else wastes more cash or later. This is absolutely crucial in those breakneck pace markets. It stakes your claim.
Secures your spot.
Exactly. And finally, think about purchasers who just need a bit more time before completion. Maybe you need to finalize financing. Maybe your lawyer needs to do some deeper legal checks. Or perhaps you just want to visit the property again to measure up for curtains. The CPCV gives a safe timescale for all these necessary steps before the final escritura. It builds in that breathing room without the constant worry that the seller will pull out or sell to someone else. Especially for international deals, that buffer time is often essential.
So, summing it up.
Yeah, in synthesis, for most buyers, and especially if you're buying in Portugal for the first time, the CPCV really is a vital safeguard. It gives you solid legal assurance, it stops you making hasty decisions in a hot market, and crucially, it ensures that both sides are committed to proceeding.
Right.
It's not just paper, it's your security blanket, gives you firm ground in what can feel like, shifting sands sometimes.
That's a brilliant summary of why it's so critical, particularly for listeners navigating this from abroad or for the first time. Okay, we get the what and the who it protects. Now let's shift gears slightly from the what to the how. What are the actual mechanics? When does this usually happen in the timeline? And what are the key stipulations that make it tick day to day?
Right, the practicalities. The CPCV usually enters the picture quite early on, typically on acceptance of the offer and before completion of the final deed, the escritura. Often it's the very first formal, legally binding step after you've reached a verbal agreement on price and basic terms. And as we touched on, it meticulously lays out, the clear identification of both parties, buyer and seller. No doubt who's involved. It includes that detailed property description address, land registry number, key features like area, number of rooms. It states the agreed sale price clearly, sets deadlines for the final deed signing, and any other key milestones everyone needs to hit. And of course, it includes any special conditions agreed between buyer and seller, maybe specific items included, or works to be completed.
And you mentioned the deposit earlier, the signal. That sounds like a really core part of the mechanics.
It absolutely is. The payment of the deposit, or signal, is one of the defining features of the CPCV process. This isn't just a small token sum, it's a significant financial commitment, usually somewhere between 10% and 20% of the total property price. Now, here's a really fascinating insight from the research, something maybe not everyone realizes. While that 10% to 20% range is almost standard practice everywhere in Portugal, the surprising fact is it isn't in legislation.
Really? It's not actually written into law.
Not the percentage itself, no. It's become the accepted norm, the standard practice, but it's not mandated by law at that specific level. And what that means for you, the buyer, is quite significant. It means the deposit percentage isn't set in stone. It's actually a negotiable term of the contract.
Ah, okay, so you could potentially negotiate that.
You could potentially try, yes. Knowing this gives you a bit of leverage. Maybe you need to keep more cash liquid for other costs, so you might propose slightly less, say 8%. Or conversely, if you want to show you're a really serious buyer in a competitive situation, you might offer slightly more, say 15% or 20%, to make your offer stand out. But the key is, it's a substantial upfront payment that really locks both parties into the deal. And it's crucial to remember, this deposit is always deducted from the final price when you complete the purchase at the escritura. It's not an extra cost, it's part of the price paid early. It's a powerful commitment device.
Okay, that's genuinely useful to know. A non-legislated but standard deposit percentage means potential room for negotiation.
Very interesting. Now, sticking with the money side. Beyond that significant deposit, what other costs are typically involved in the CPCV process itself? Things our listeners really need to factor into their budget early on. I bet everyone wants the full picture of potential expenses. Absolutely, this is vital for realistic budgeting. These costs come on top of the actual property price, so you need to account for them separately. Let's break them down. First, obviously, is the deposit signal itself. As we said, usually 10% to 20%. It's the biggest single upfront cost at this stage. So on a $250,000 property, you're looking at $25,000 to $50,000 right there. That's a serious chunk of change.
Definitely the main one. What else?
Next up, legal fees. You absolutely need a solicitor or a lawyer. They draft, review, negotiate the CPCV for you, do the due diligence we'll talk about. Their fees can vary quite a bit, typically somewhere between, say, €750 and €4,000.
Why such a big range?
It really depends on the complexity. Buying a straightforward apartment is different from buying, say, rural land with complicated rights of way, or an off-plan property with phased payments. Also depends on the lawyer's experience and exactly what services are included. But honestly, a good lawyer at this stage is worth their weight in gold. It's an investment in avoiding much bigger problems later. Then you might have notary fees. These are often optional for the CPCV itself, but highly recommended by many. If you choose to sign the CPCV in front of a public notary to get it authenticated, that could cost between 150 and 600 euro.
What's the benefit of that extra step and cost?
It adds an extra layer of legal security. The notary verifies who you are, who the seller is, and that you both understand and freely consent to the contract. It makes it harder for anyone to challenge the contract's validity later. Think of it as official proof the signing is legitimate. Similarly, there are optional registration fees. You can choose to register the signed CPCV at the land registry, the Conservatoria de Registro Predial. This usually costs around 50 euro to 250 euros.
So why do that?
Again, extra security. Registering it makes your agreement to buy the property a matter of public record. It essentially puts a temporary hold or claim notice on the property's official file. This prevents the seller from legally selling it to someone else while your CPCV is in effect. It gives your claim priority. Very useful, especially in complex deals or if there's a long gap before the final deed. Now, for our foreign buyers, remember translation and certification costs. If documents like your ID or maybe a power of attorney need official translation into Portuguese and certification, budget maybe 100 to 500 euro for that. Ensures everything is legally compliant.
Okay, translations. Anything else?
Yes, one more common one, especially for overseas buyers, the power of attorney. If you can't be in Portugal to sign the CPCV yourself, you'll likely grant power of attorney to someone, usually your lawyer, to sign on your behalf. Setting this up typically costs between 75 and 200 marks. Very practical solution.
Right, so it's not just the big deposit. There's a whole list of other potential costs. Legal, notary, registration, translation, power of attorney.
Exactly. It's really important to factor all these potential costs into your initial budget calculations. Knowing them up front avoids nasty surprises and helps the whole process run more smoothly. It's all part of making a well-informed investment in your Portuguese dream property.
Wow, okay, that is an incredibly thorough breakdown of the costs. Really highlights why detailed budgeting right from the start is so important. So we've covered the what, the why, the how much. Let's map out the actual journey now. For our listeners keen to understand the flow, what's the step-by-step guide to navigating the CPCV process in Portugal? Where does this path actually begin?
Right, let's walk through the typical steps. The journey often kicks off even before you think about drafting the CPCV itself.
Makes sense. You've got to find the place first, haven't you?
Yeah.
That initial spark.
Exactly. So, step 1, find and reserve your property. This is that exciting phase, identifying the property that fits your dream, your needs, your budget. Once you found it, you negotiate. You nail down the price, any specific conditions, what's included, what's not. Now, during this initial negotiation, you might be asked to sign a simple reservation contract or agreement, maybe pay a small fee, just to take the property off the market temporarily while you prepare the CPCV. But here's a really important heads up based on our sources. This type of preliminary reservation contract is not obligatory under Portuguese law, and in most cases, it's actually not recommended.
Oh. Why not recommended?
Primarily because it usually offers much weaker legal protection compared to a proper CPCV. It might not be very detailed, the penalties for withdrawal might be unclear or non-existent, it can be a bit flimsy. If you pay a reservation fee under a weak agreement, you could potentially lose that money quite easily if the seller simply changes their mind before the CPCV is signed. So it's something to approach with caution. The CPCV is where the real legal security kicks in.
That's a crucial warning about those initial reservation forms. Easy to think any signed paper is solid protection. Okay, so you found the property, negotiated the basics, maybe skipped the flimsy reservation. What's the absolute next critical step, the non-negotiable one?
The absolute must-do, step 2, is to appoint legal representation. Seriously, don't try to do this without a lawyer, especially if you're buying from abroad or unfamiliar with Portuguese law. Your lawyer, your solicitor, plays a vital role here. Their first major task is performing comprehensive due diligence.
Due diligence. Sounds important. What does it actually involve?
It's a deep dive investigation, not just a quick look. They'll meticulously check the land registry, Conservatoria de Registro Predial, to confirm who legally owns the property, that it's registered correctly, and crucially, check for any hidden charges or burdens. We're talking things like existing mortgages the seller hasn't cleared, any tax debts attached to the property, maybe legal disputes affecting the title, or even rights of way someone else might have over the land. They also verify the property's building permissions, the license of de utilización are in order, and check local planning rules to ensure there aren't restrictions you don't know about. Can you actually use it as a home? Are there plans for a motorway next door? Their job is specifically to detect legal risks or restrictions before you sign the CPCV and hand over that big deposit.
Right, find the skeletons in the closet before you commit.
Exactly. Imagine finding out later there's a huge unpaid debt attached to the property or that the extension was built illegally. Due diligence prevents that. The legal costs for this, as we mentioned, usually fall between 750 and 2,000 euro, varying with complexity. But skipping this step to save money, that's incredibly risky. This is your fundamental protection against unseen problems. It safeguards your whole investment.
Okay, makes perfect sense. Lawyer up, do the checks. So once your lawyer has done their homework and hopefully given the all clear, we move to step 3, draft and review the CPCV itself. This feels like the absolute core, where all those protective clauses we talked about get written down.
It absolutely is the heart of the agreement. At this stage, either your lawyer or sometimes the seller's lawyer will prepare the first draft of the Contrato Promessa de Compra y Venda. This document needs to be incredibly precise. It has to clearly state all those key terms we discussed earlier: the exact sale price, how and when payments are made, the specific deposit amount, the signal, and when it gets paid. It needs to set that crucial timeline for signing the final deed, the escritura. The sources suggest typically 30 to 90 days is common, but this window is negotiable if both sides agree. Maybe you need longer for your mortgage to come through, or the seller needs more time to vacate.
And those special conditions too.
Yes. Critically, it must include any conditions precedent. These are things that must happen or be true for the final sale to proceed. For example, the sale being conditional on you getting mortgage approval. Or maybe the seller has to provide proof and a legal structure has been regularized. If these conditions aren't met, the deal might not go ahead, often without penalty. And of course, it spells out very clearly the penalties for breach of contract if either side pulls out without a valid reason.
Like that prenup for the property you mentioned.
Exactly like that. It covers the what-ifs. Who pays what, when, and under what circumstances, especially if things go wrong. Now, both you, the buyer, and the seller must carefully review this draft. Understand every clause. Agree to all the terms. This is where your lawyer is invaluable, ensuring the language protects your interests and truly reflects the deal you thought you made. Lots of back and forth negotiation can happen at this stage until everyone's happy.
Okay, so meticulous drafting and reviewing. Then, once everyone is finally happy with the wording, we reach step 4. Sign the CPCV and pay the deposit. This must feel like a really big moment, right, where the deal truly becomes solid.
It is. It's a huge milestone, probably the most significant legal and emotional step before you actually get the keys at the final deed signing. So once both parties, guided by their lawyers, have approved the final version, it's time to sign. Buyer and seller both sign the contract. Ideally, this happens in person and with certified signatures.
Certified signatures, what does that involve?
It usually means signing in front of a lawyer or a notary who formally witnesses the signatures and verifies the identity of the people signing. This adds that extra layer of legal security, making it very hard to dispute later that the signatures are genuine or that the people knew what they were signing. At the same time as signing, or immediately after, the buyer pays that agreed deposit, the signal, typically the 10% to 20% we discussed. This is usually done via bank transfer. It's the moment the money commitment happens. And crucially, right at that point, the signed CPCV becomes legally binding, and both parties are committed to completing the transaction. The agreement now has real legal force.
Okay, legally binding. And you mentioned penalties for withdrawal earlier. This seems like the point where they become really important to understand.
Absolutely critical. Understanding these penalties is key to knowing your rights and your financial exposure. Let's break them down clearly. If the buyer withdraws, if you, the buyer, decide to back out of the deal without reason, meaning for a reason not covered as a valid condition in the CPCV, like failing to get your pre-agreed mortgage, then you usually forfeit your deposit. That money is lost. The Portuguese term is entregue em singelo, basically meaning simply handed over. It's compensation to the seller for their time and for taking the property off the market. Now remember, the contract can specify different consequences, so you must read that clause carefully. But forfeiting the deposit is the standard outcome.
Okay, so buyer pulls out without cause, loses the deposit. What if the seller backs out?
If the seller withdraws, now if the seller gets cold feet and withdraws without a legally valid reason stipulated in the contract, the consequences for them are typically much harsher. They may be required to return double the deposit to you, the buyer.
Double. Wow.
Yes, double. It's a significant deterrent. So, if your deposit was 30,000 euro and the seller backs out without cause, they would owe you 60,000 euros. This provides strong incentive for the seller to stick to the deal, compelling the sale. And there's more. If the seller breaches the contract by refusing to sell, you, the buyer, don't just have to accept double the deposit back. You can take legal action to compel the seller to proceed with the escritura. It's called specific performance. You can potentially force the sale through the courts, although this can be a lengthy process.
So you could actually force them to sell.
Potentially, yes. The
Yeah.
law provides that option. So the CPCV gives you substantial legal muscle and financial protection if the other party tries to unfairly back out. Knowing these specific penalties really empowers you in the transaction.
That is powerful. Knowing those specific consequences really underscores the commitment, but also the protection. Okay, now there's an interesting step 5, which is described as optional. Verify or register the CPCV. If the contract is already legally binding upon signing, why would someone take these extra optional steps? What's the added benefit?
That's a really good question. These optional steps are all about adding extra layers of security and public transparency, which can be particularly wise, especially in bigger sales or complex situations, or just for extra peace of mind. One option, as we touched on with certified signatures, is formally signing the CPCV in front of a public notary. While the contract is binding once signed by both parties, with or without a notary, involving a notary provides additional legal security. The notary officially verifies identities, confirms understanding and consent, and their involvement lends a very high degree of official authentication to the document. It costs a bit extra, maybe 150, 600 euro, but it makes the contract's execution almost indisputable.
So extra proof the signing was legitimate. What about the registration part?
The other optional, but often very strategically valuable step, is to register the signed CPCV with the land registry, the Conservatoria de Registro Predial. This costs around 50 to 250 euro and acts to publicly declare your interest in the property, end quote. My strong reinforcement here is that while it's not mandatory for the CPCV to be valid between you and the seller, registering it gives extra security because it makes your claim public. Think of the land registry as the official public logbook for all properties. Everything related to a property ownership, mortgages, loans, any legal claim should be registered there. When you register your CPCV, it puts a notice on that property's official record saying you have a binding agreement to buy it.
So it warns off other potential buyers or creditors.
Exactly. It provides crucial protection against the seller trying to sell the property to someone else after signing the CPCV with you, because your registered interest takes legal precedence. It also protects you if, for instance, a creditor of the seller tries to place a lien on the property after your CPCV is registered. It makes your claim visible and prioritized. For an international buyer especially, this public record provides undeniable transparency and security.
Okay, optional, but potentially very valuable layers of protection.
Got it.
And that brings us finally to step 6. Prepare for the escritura, the final deed signing. This is the finish line, isn't it? The moment it actually becomes yours.
Indeed, this is the grand finale. The Escritura Publica de Compra y Venda, the public deed of sale and purchase. This is the formal, official transfer of ownership. Now, in that period between signing the CPCV and this final step, typically that 30 to 90-day window, remember several crucial preparations are happening behind the scenes. Your lawyer is working diligently, doing final checks to confirm the property is still clear of legal or tax issues right up to the last minute. No new debts or loans popped up, all conditions met. If you're getting a mortgage, this is when the bank finalizes everything, ensuring the funds are ready to be released on the day of the escritura. Then, you, the seller, your respective lawyers, and the bank, if involved, agree on the exact date, time, and location for the signing. This almost always happens at a notary's office. The notary plays a central role here. They will verify everything, read the deed aloud, ensure both parties understand it, witness the signatures, and officially record the transfer of ownership. And of course, the final payment is arranged. The balance of the property price, the total price minus the deposit, a sum you already paid, needs to be transferred. This is usually done via a bank-certified check or a direct bank transfer coordinated by the notary on the day. As we said, most CPCVs allow that 30 to 90 days for all this to happen, but the time frame can be adjusted if everyone agrees. Maybe international bank transfers take longer, or someone needs to align it with moving dates. Flexibility is possible. But yes, this stage is the culmination. It's about ensuring every single detail is perfectly lined up for that smooth, legally sound transfer, turning the promise of the CPCV into the reality of you owning your Portuguese property.
What an incredible deep dive that was.
We've really unpacked the promissory contract of sale, the CPCV, and it's so clear now, isn't it? It's way more than just a piece of paper. It really is your best legal ally when you're navigating Portugal's sometimes quite fast-moving property market. From laying down those solid ground rules to keeping your deposits safe through those legally binding commitments and those hefty penalties we discussed, it's meticulously designed to protect you all the way. For retirees chasing the sun, first-time buyers feeling a bit lost in a new system, and definitely for overseas investors juggling things from afar. Understanding exactly how the CPCV works is just fundamental. It's key to having a safe, secure, and transparent purchase. It really feels like the difference between a potentially very stressful experience and a genuinely confident one. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope that getting to grips with this document is a big, empowering step towards your successful property purchase here in Portugal.
And, walking through this whole process, this traditional document-heavy contract binding people and spelling out terms, it does spark a thought about the future, doesn't it? This raises an important question. As the digital world keeps evolving and remote transactions become, well, almost normal, especially for international buyers, how might the way we execute and secure these preliminary agreements, like the CPCV, transform? Could we see things like blockchain-based smart contracts automatically handling deposits and deadlines, or maybe fully digital signatures verified biometrically becoming the norm? What new opportunities might that offer for, say, speed or even greater transparency? But also, what challenges could it pose to the traditional legal frameworks, the paper-based contract we've just spent all this time discussing? It's certainly something interesting to ponder as technology keeps changing how we do business across borders, especially for such major investments.
That is a really fascinating thought, where this could all be heading. Definitely something to mull over. Now, if this deep dive has sparked more questions for you, or more importantly, if it's genuinely helped you feel more prepared on your journey to finding your perfect spot in Portugal, we would absolutely love to hear from you. As part of the Access Portugal team, our whole aim is to share information that really empowers people like you. So please, do leave a comment on our channel. Let us know your thoughts, perhaps your own experiences with the CPCV, or suggest any other topics you'd like us to tackle in a future deep dive. And hey, if you found this valuable, please do us a quick favor and give it a like. And definitely subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Honestly, your engagement, the comments, the likes, the subscriptions, it really encourages us to keep digging deep, keep providing good information, and keep opening the door to Portugal for people all around the world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.